Hello students, how are you all? So are you ready to know about the national movement in our history? So let's start chapter 12, the national movement. In this chapter you will study about formation of associations to oppose British rule, formation of Indian National Congress, partition of Bengal 1905, formation of the Muslim League, Morley Minto reforms 1909, Home Rule League, Lucknow Pact of 1916, Mahatma Gandhi and the National Movement, British Acts, reforms and Indian movements. Formation of associations to oppose British rule. After the revolution of 1857, the power of ruling India was shifted to the British kingship with the proclamation of Queen Victoria on 1st November 1858. This also was not helpful for the Indians or their welfare anyway, as the Indians did not have a say in the formation of policies. All the laws, acts, etc. were made in the favor of Britishers who were draining wealth from India, making its people poorer every day. The resentments of the people came up in the form of different rebellions. A number of organizations, as given here, were formed before the formation of Indian National Congress. The Landholder Society at Calcutta in 1838. In 1843, the Bengal British India Society was formed. The Madras Association and the Bombay Association was established in 1852. In 1876, Surendranath Banerjee established Indian Association in Calcutta. In 1885, Indian National Congress was formed. Formation of Indian National Congress. A new era in the political life of India began with the foundation of INC in December 1885 by A.O. Hume, a retired British official. He was held by 72 educated Indian delegates from different regions of the country. The first meeting of Indian National Congress took place in Bombay. W.C. Banerjee became the first president of the Indian National Congress. Slowly, Congress became the backbone of the national movement 1885 to 1947. The first phase of the freedom movement was confined only to the educated classes. The Indian National Congress submitted its grievances in the form of prayers and petitions. The early phase of the Congress was influenced by the moderates 1885 to 1905. The moderates had complete faith in the British. They adopted moderate ways to pursue their goals. Their main demands were: this is the image of A.O. Hume and this is the image of W.C. Banerjee. Their main demands were to have representative institutes in the whole country for the welfare of the people, to create provincial legislative councils in all provinces, to have higher posts for Indians in the administration, to hold civil services examinations in India, to ensure the growth of Indian industries and handicrafts, to stop the drain of wealth to Britain, to end the exploitation of Indian resources and people. The moderate phase. During the first 20 years of the moderate nationalists or moderates dominated the party. Surendranath Banerjee, Firoz Shah Mehta, Dadabhai Nauroji, Mahadev Govind Ranade, Badruddin Tayyabji and Gopal Krishna Gokhale were some important moderate leaders. They were moderates in their objectives and methods. They believed in ideas rather than action. They followed a policy of 3 Ps: prayer, protest and petition. The moderates did not demand independence in the early stages of the freedom movement. The British were favorably inclined towards the Congress during the early years of its formation. Some British officials even attended Congress sessions and actively participated in the discussions. But after some time, the British realized that the Congress was becoming the focus of Indian nationalism. The radical phase. Plague and famine killed thousands of people. Economic conditions were miserable. Young Indians were inspired by the common people of Ethiopia, Japan, and Russia, who rose against the oppressors. A section of congressmen who had lost faith in the British government began to drift towards the extremism. This radical faction of the Congress came to be known as extremists. The main aims and objectives of the extremists included the following. They were opposed to the ideology and techniques of the moderates. They preferred not to get out of the Congress but to capture it from within. The highest goal set by the moderates at the Congress session of 1905 was the attainment of a colonial form of self-government. But the ideal of the extremists was absolute autonomy for India. They fixed Swaraj, self-rule, as their goal. Bal Gangadhar Tilak declared that Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. The leaders of the extremists were Aurobindo Ghosh, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal and Lala Lajpat Rai Lal Bal Pal. Do you know Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's Bande Mataram was sung in 1886 for the first time. They did not believe in appeals, they believed in protest, hartals and slogans. They propagated Indian culture and Hinduism. This is the picture of Lal Bal Pal, the famous radical leaders. Partition of Bengal 1905. In order to weaken the Hindu-Muslim unity in the national movement, Lord Curzon issued an order on 19 July 1905 to partition Bengal, then consisting of present-day West Bengal, Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha and Bangladesh. East Bengal, now Bangladesh, in which the majority of population was Muslim, was separated from the rest of Bengal, which had a high percentage of Hindus. The official reasons given by Britishers was that it was difficult to govern and collect revenue from such a big province. There were great protests against the partition. The day was observed as the day of mourning. The Swadeshi meaning of one's own country, boycott and national education were adopted as tools for achieving Swaraj by the radicals. Swaraj means self-rule. Students played an important role in these movements by boycotting classes and picketing shops, setting foreign goods. Many women joined processions and picketing. It became the chief forms of agitation followed by the Congress. This movement encouraged love for Swadeshi goods, participation in mass rallies to boycott foreign goods, boycott of government services, schools and colleges, surrender of titles given by the British. The two movements were instrumental in the establishment of textile mills, national banks, chemical works and insurance companies. Volunteers delivered Swadeshi goods at the doorstep of every household. Swadeshi movement spread from Bengal to Maharashtra and Punjab. The government suppressed the movement, processions and meetings were banned and leaders were imprisoned without trial. Tilak was sentenced to 6 years of rigorous imprisonment. During this time, Dadabhai Naoroji presided over the Calcutta session of Congress in 1906. A call was given for attainment of Swaraj, self-government. The differences between the moderates and radicals came to head during the Surat session in 1907. There was a split in the party and the two groups posted their way. The moderates were led by Gopal Krishna Gokhale and Feroz Shah Mehta. The radicals were referred to as the extremists by the British. They were led by Lala Lajpat Rai, Pal, Bipin Chandra Pal and Bal Gangadhar Tilak. The moderates began to control the Congress and the radicals decided to function from outside. The two groups were reunited in the Congress session at Lucknow in 1916. Do you know? Many Indian leaders and Indian supporters living abroad sought anti-British help from various countries. They sent money and arms to Indian revolutionaries. Prominent among them were Lala Hardayal, Madam Kama, Sardar Singh Rana, Bhai Parmanand, V.D. Savarkar, etc. Formation of the Muslim League. Through the partition of Bengal, the British sowed the seeds of communalism. They encouraged the Muslim to form a separate party and fight through separate electorates. The Muslim thought that they might lose their identity if they joined the Congress. In 1906, Nawab Salimullah Khan of Dhaka and Prince Aga Khan founded Muslim League to protect the interest of the Muslims, with an idea of getting a separate electorate for Muslims. Actually, the Britishers were practicing the policy of divide and rule to weaken the nationalist movements. Morley Minto Reforms 1909. To pacify the moderate leaders, the government announced the Indian Councils Act, popularly known as Morley Minto Reforms. But the reforms did not pay any heed to the demands of Indians for Swaraj. Muslims were granted separate electorate representation. They were grouped into separate constituencies from where only Muslim candidates could contest election. This reform was a threat to the Hindu-Muslim unity in the national movement. The moderates opposed it and the struggle for Swaraj became more intense. Home Rule League. In 1916, an Irish lady, Miss Annie Besant, established the Home Rule League in Madras and Bal Gangadhar Tilak established it in Maharashtra. The purpose was to attain self-government. The British government tried to crush the movement, but agitation continued. Lucknow Pact of 1916. In 1916, the moderates and the radicals reunited after 9 years and signed a joint pact at Lucknow with the Muslim League. They jointly demanded self-rule for India. Mahatma Gandhi and the national movement. After the First World War, 1914-18, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi took the leadership of the Congress. The national movement entered a new phase after the arrival of Mahatma Gandhi. Born on 2nd October 1869 at Porbandar, Gujarat, he received his early education in India and went to England to study law. He returned to India and started practicing law. In 1893, he went to South Africa. Here he faced racial discrimination. He developed the technique of satyagraha, a form of protest based on truth and non-violence against a ruthless government. Gandhiji came back to India in 1915. He introduced the technique of non-violent agitation, which was called satyagraha. Demand for truth. It was a non-violent struggle against the British oppression. He propagated tolerance, brotherhood, non-violence, ahimsa, and simple living. This is the image of Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhiji realized that social reforms were necessary for a truly national struggle. He opened Sabarmati Ashram in Gujarat, where people of all castes and religions were welcome. His first movement was at Champaran in Bihar in 1917. He forced the government to increase the price of indigo for the benefit of peasants. By 1919, Gandhiji became the most popular leader of India and launched many powerful mass movements. Do you know? During Gandhiji's period, the leader like Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose also came to the forefront with the demand of complete independence. Montagu-Chelmsford Reform or the Government of India Act 1919. After the First World War, the government passed the Government of India Act 1919, popularly known as the Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms. The British paid no heed to the agitation for self-rule going on all over the country. They introduced another set of reforms to appease people. But the reforms were insignificant. The number of elected members was increased in the Legislative Assembly and the Council of States, but there was no change in the location of power. The system of dual government, diarchy, was introduced. All important subjects like finance and police were under the control of the governor, and the Indian ministers were given the charge of education and wealth. The real powers were still vested in the hands of the British officials. Indians were disappointed by the reforms. Protests broke out all over the country. Rowlatt Act of 1919. There was growing unrest and protest. The British government passed the Rowlatt Act. It empowered the government to arrest anyone without a warrant and imprison people without trial. This act was known as the Black Law, as no arrested person was allowed to go for an appeal. Dalil, argument and vakil, lawyer, this caused massive demonstrations and hartals all across the country. A countrywide protest was organized on 6th April 1919, which was observed as National Humiliation Day. Jallianwala Bagh Massacre 1919. On 10th April 1919, two national leaders, Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu and Dr. Satyapal, were arrested in Punjab. On April 13, 1919, the people of Punjab gathered on the auspicious day of Baisakhi at Jallianwala Bagh near Golden Temple in Amritsar. This is the image of a Jallianwala Bagh massacre. They were protesting peacefully against the arrest. General Dyer, the military commander of Amritsar, came to the park with some soldiers and blocked the only entrance of the park and ordered his men to open fire. The firing lasted for nearly 10 minutes, till all the ammunitions were exhausted. Hundreds of innocent unarmed men, women and children were killed and thousands were critically wounded. The massacre stunned the whole country. The government imposed martial law in Punjab. Under martial law, people were tortured, newspapers were banned and mails were censored. All this repression, however, further strengthened people's determination to fight against oppressions. Do you know, all national leaders condemned this cowardly act of Jallianwala Bagh incident. Rabindranath Tagore renounced his knighthood. Khilafat Movement 1920. Turkey suffered injustice at the hands of the British after the First World War because Turkey had against Britain in this war. Turkey was important for the Indian Muslims as Sultan of Turkey was also the Caliph or Khalifa, that means religious head of the Muslims throughout the world. All Ali brothers, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, started the Khilafat movement against the British to undo the injustices. They put pressure on the British government to give better treatment to Turkey. Through this demand, Muslims were drawn into the national movement in large numbers. The Khilafat movement became a part of national struggle under the leadership of Gandhiji. The Congress leaders joined the agitation and popularized it. The non-cooperation movement 1920 to 22. Angered by the rigid attitude of the British, the Congress decided to start a non-cooperation movement under the leadership of Gandhiji. Mahatma Gandhi said, the British rule was established and survived in India with the cooperation of Indians. If Indians refused to cooperate, British rule would collapse and Swaraj would come. The Congress session at Nagpur ratified Gandhiji's call for non-cooperation not to cooperate with the government. Non-cooperation was directed against the injustice done by the British in Punjab and Turkey. It began with renouncing of titles and honors given by the British, boycott of legislatures, boycott of students and teachers from schools and colleges, opening of Jamia Millia at Aligarh and Kashi Vidyapeeth at Banaras, boycott of government offices and courts, bonfires of foreign goods, hartals and strikes all over the country. After 1919, the struggle against the British rule took a form of mass movement which involved peasants, students, workers, tribals, women, etc. The unity between Hindus and Muslims strengthened. People participated in the non-cooperation wholeheartedly. The Britishers retaliated by imprisoning all the important leaders except Gandhiji. I refuse to acknowledge the present government as the rightful one and deem it my national, my religious and my human duty to liberate my country and my people from its servitude. Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, 1922. Chauri Chaura. In 1922, at Chauri Chaura in Uttar Pradesh, the police fired upon a group of demonstrators. The agitated mob set a police station on fire and burned 22 policemen alive. Gandhiji was arrested. He called off the non-cooperation movement. Subhash Chandra Bose, Lala Lajpat Rai, Jawaharlal Nehru, Ali brothers, etc. were shocked and opposed Gandhiji's decision. Congress got divided into two groups. Gandhiji and its supporters wanted to follow a program of promoting Khadi, Hindu-Muslim unity and untouchability. Some leaders wanted to participate in the elections to get elected to legislative councils and then destroy the legislatures working from inside. Later on, they formed the Swaraj Party, which won a large number of seats in the election to central and provincial legislatures and kept the anti-British going. Peasants and Workers Movement. The peasants and workers joined the freedom movement to oppose against British exploitation and high taxes. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel took up the cause of peasants of Bardoli in Gujarat. This is the image of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Simon Commission, 1927. The Simon Commission was sent to India to review the Government of India Act of 1919 and suggest further reforms to appease the Indians. Congress decided to oppose it as the commission did not have a single Indian representative. Congress adopted complete independence as its goal. Simon Commission was boycotted by Congress as well as Muslim League. Lala Lajpat Rai was seriously injured in a police lathi charge in Lahore. He later succumbed to his injuries. Lahore Session 1929. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru presided over the Lahore session of All India Congress Committee. The historic resolution of Purn Swaraj or complete independence was passed. It was decided to celebrate January 26, 1930 as the first Independence Day of India in this session. Do you know? The Constitution of India was completed on November 26, 1949, but it was decided to enforce it on January 26 in the memory of January 26, 1930. Civil Disobedience Movement 1932-1934. The British government took the monopoly of making salt and passed a law banning march 12, 1930. Mahatma Gandhi began his historic Dandi March from with his 78 supporters Sabarmati Ashram to Dandi. This march is also called Dandi March as they made salt from the seawater and broke the law. Salt Satyagrah was an open challenge to the British and civil disobedience spread all over the country. It became the second mass movement as schools, colleges and courts were boycotted, foreign goods were burnt, peasants refused to pay taxes and shops were picketed. This is the image of Frontier Gandhi. The movement was led by Abdul Ghaffar Khan in Northwest Frontier Province, so he was popularly known as Frontier Gandhi. Indian merchants formed the Indian Industrial and Commercial Congress and the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industries under Purushottam Das Thakur and G.D. Birla. They joined civil disobedience movement to safeguard their business from British. The British government tried to repress the movement and resorted to violence. Thousands along with Gandhiji and Nehruji were arrested. Nationalists spread in all parts of the country. People started believing that they were all parts of one nation. In 1930 and 31, the government called first and second roundtable conference. They refused dominion status and Gandhiji resumed the civil disobedience movement. It was withdrawn in 1934. Revolutionary movements for Indian independence. The radical-minded Indians were upset when the non-cooperation movement was withdrawn. They decided to loot the government cash from the train for buying weapons. Many of them were arrested and tried in the Kakori conspiracy case. Jugantar Party, started by Aurobindo Ghosh, planned an armed revolt against the British during the First World War. Hindustani Socialist Republican Association was formed in Kanpur by Ram Prasad Bismil, Jogesh Chatterjee, Chandrasekhar Azad, Yogendra Shukla, etc. Kakori train robbery was a well-known act of this group. In Lahore, 1928, Bhagat Singh, Azad and Rajguru assassinated Police Commissioner Sanders, who was responsible for Lala Lajpat Rai's death. A bomb was thrown in the Central Legislative Assembly by Bhagat Singh and Batukeshwar Dutt. Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev and Rajguru were hanged to death in 1931 in Lahore. Some other revolutionary groups were India House, Ghadar Party and Berlin Party. After the withdrawal of the civil disobedience movement, Gandhiji withdrew from active politics. He started working for upliftment of Harijans, Dalits and other depressed classes, formed associations to put forward their demands and grievances. Government of India Act 1935. The Act introduced some reforms to pacify Indians. The Governor General was the head of the central administration. He continued to have the supreme power. The member of the states of federation has autonomy with respect to subjects delegated to them. The centre continued to control defence, external affairs and railways. A federal court was established for provinces and princely states. Congress, Muslim League, along with other parties and princely states, rejected the proposal. During Second World War 1939, the British dragged India into war to satisfy its own imperialist ambitions. Anti-British movement started in full swing. In 1942, British government sent Sir Stafford Cripps to enlist total cooperation of INC during the Second World War, but the mission failed as demands for complete independence and self-government after the war were rejected. Quit India Movement 1942. After the failure of Cripps' mission, it was well known that the British government would not grant freedom to India. Congress was banned and the police and army was ordered to suppress the movement. Gandhiji feared that Japan may attack on British possessions in India. Hence, he wanted the British to leave India. Gandhiji gave the final blow to the Britishers on August 8, 1942 by launching the Quit India Movement. It was a civil disobedience movement in response to Gandhiji's call for immediate independence. Gandhiji and all prominent Congress leaders were arrested. Gandhiji's mantra of do or die inspired thousands of people. The Britishers were infuriated. The police and army waged brutal terror on people. Subhash Chandra Bose joined a hand of friendship with the enemies of the British like Germany and Japan to get the Britishers out of India. Give me blood and I'll give you freedom was the slogan of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. He disappeared from the British detention and went abroad to seek help for the cause of India's independence. He organized Indian National Army to overthrow the British from India. He adopted the tricolor flag and the slogan of Jai Hind. His INA could not succeed against the troop of Allied Southeast Asia. In spite of its failure, the INA was able to motivate the Indian freedom fighters and create fear for the British government. Shimla Conference. The Shimla Conference was held in 1945 headed by Lord Wavell. He wanted to give the Indian leaders a representation in the council, except the commander-in-chief post. Congress denied this. This is an image of Shimla Conference. Towards independence. The Second World War came to an end in 1945. The Labour Party under Clement Attlee came to power in Britain. He was sympathetic towards the demand of Indian people for freedom. In March 1946, a cabinet mission was sent to India. It proposed the formation of an Indian interim government and a constituent assembly. Muslim League refused to participate in the interim government. They demanded a separate state for Pakistan. Lord Mountbatten, the then Viceroy of India, presented a plan for the division of India into India and Pakistan. Gandhiji and other Indian leaders did not approve but had no choice but to accept the partition due to widespread riots. Summing up, a new era in the political life of India began with the foundation of INC in December 1885 by A.O. Hume, a retired British official. During the first 20 years of the Congress, the moderate nationalists or moderates dominated the party. After the First World War, 1914 to 18, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi took the leadership of the Congress. The national movement entered a new phase after the arrival of Mahatma Gandhi. Angered by the rigid attitude of the British, the Congress decided to start a non-cooperation movement under the leadership of Gandhiji. Thank you, class. Let's meet in the next chapter.